It was July 1518. Strasbourg, a small town in the Holy Roman Empire, was glowing under the summer sun. The streets smelled of fresh bread from the baker's oven. Merchants shouted prices in the market. Chickens clucked somewhere nearby, and church bells rang slowly, marking another ordinary day. Well, ordinary for about 5 more minutes. Down one narrow street, a woman stepped out of her house. Her name was Frau Troffea. She didn't carry bread or laundry. She didn't stop to chat with neighbors. Instead, she started dancing. No music, no drum beats, no fiddles, just her feet tapping, sliding, spinning on the cobblestones. People stopped to watch, curious. At first they smiled. Maybe she was celebrating something. But the smile faded when she didn't stop. Minutes turned into hours. Sweat poured down her face. Her breathing grew heavy, yet she kept moving. By the afternoon, her shoes were off, and her bare feet slapped against the stones. She looked pale, but still, she danced. Some whispered, "She's cursed." Others muttered about demons or punishment from God. One man joked, "Maybe she just really likes music no one else can hear." The joke didn't land. The longer they watched, the more uneasy they felt. Night fell. Frau Troffea finally went home, only to return the next morning. And she danced again, and again, and again. Nobody knew it yet, but this was just the first step in a nightmare that would grip the whole town. Day after day, Frau Troffea kept going. Morning to night, under the hot July sun, she twirled, stomped, and shuffled. Her feet were blistered, bleeding, but she didn't stop. It was as if something deep inside her refused to let her rest. And then, she wasn't alone. It started with one man. He joined in, looking confused, but unable to stop his legs. Then another. By the end of the week, there were more than 30 people moving the same way. Arms jerking, feet pounding, eyes wide, as if trapped in some invisible grip. No music, no celebration, just the sound of dozens of feet slapping the cobblestones and heavy breaths filling the summer air. The townsfolk didn't know what to think. Some crossed themselves and whispered about God's anger. Others said it was the devil's work. A few insisted it was the curse of Saint Vitus, who was known to punish sinners by making them dance until they collapsed. Rumors spread faster than the dancers themselves. People claimed they'd seen glowing lights at night or shadows moving without bodies. Children were told to stay indoors. The marketplace grew quieter each day as more and more people fell under the strange spell. By now, the local council was alarmed. This wasn't just odd behavior, it was dangerous. People were collapsing from exhaustion, yet their legs kept twitching like marionettes on strings. Something was wrong with Strasbourg, and it was only getting started. By the second week, Strasbourg's leaders decided they had to act. The sight of dozens of people dancing themselves into the ground was too strange and too public to ignore. The town's physician was called. He examined a few dancers, probably while trying to dodge flying elbows. His diagnosis? Hot blood. Yes, apparently their bodies were overheated with too much blood swirling around. And his prescription was even stranger. They should keep dancing. The idea was to burn out the sickness. like letting a fever run its course. So, in what might be one of history's worst medical plans, the council built a stage. They even hired musicians to help cure the patients. Now picture this: a wooden platform in the middle of town, fiddles and drums playing cheerful tunes, and a crowd of exhausted, pale-faced people stumbling in rhythm. Not because they wanted to, but because their bodies refused to stop. It didn't work. Some dancers collapsed mid-step, their chests heaving. Others suffered heart attacks or strokes right there on the stage. Still, the music played and the dancing went on. Priests began muttering about Saint Vitus again. They said the only way to stop it was through repentance and prayer. But for the victims, prayer didn't stop their legs from moving. By now, the plague wasn't just an oddity. It was a spectacle. Crowds came to watch, and every day more joined in, like the curse was spreading through the very air of Strasbourg. The town thought they were helping. In truth, they were only feeding the fire. By late July, the number of dancers had exploded. Dozens had turned into hundreds. The streets of Strasbourg looked less like a market town and more like a strange, chaotic festival nobody wanted to attend. Families begged their loved ones to stop. They grabbed their arms, tried to hold them down, even tied them to chairs. But the moment they let go, the victims' legs twitched, jerked, and pulled them back into the streets. Shops shut their doors. The marketplace was nearly empty, except for a few vendors who nervously glanced over their shoulders, afraid they might be next. Even church services were disrupted as the sound of shuffling feet echoed through the walls. The heat made everything worse. Sweat poured down dancers' faces. Their clothes stuck to their bodies, and the stench of exhaustion hung in the air. People dropped to the ground, unable to breathe. Yet their feet still kicked against the dirt. Some never got up again. And then, just like that, it began to fade. By early September, the dancers slowed. Some collapsed and never rose again. Others woke as if from a trance, confused, sore and weak, with no memory of the last few weeks. The streets of Strasbourg were quiet once more. Though quiet meant the sound of hammers repairing broken stalls and families weeping over fresh graves. The survivors were taken to the shrine of Saint Vitus in a nearby chapel. There, priests prayed over them, sprinkled holy water, and placed small crosses in their hands. Some believed this finally broke the curse. Others thought the plague had simply burned itself out. But the question lingered. What caused it? Physicians blamed overheated blood. Priests insisted it was punishment from Saint Vitus. Modern historians have their own theories. Ergot poisoning from moldy rye bread, which can cause hallucinations and spasms, or mass hysteria, brought on by months of famine, disease, and crushing stress. We may never know the truth. Even stranger, this wasn't the only case in history. Similar dancing manias had struck parts of Europe before, though none as famous or as deadly as Strasbourg's summer of 1518. And so the legend lives on. The image of barefoot figures spinning in the heat, faces pale, eyes wide, feet pounding the stones until they could pound no more. If you ever walk the old streets of Strasbourg at night, listen carefully. Locals say, on some hot July evenings, you might hear the faint slap of unseen feet, keeping time to a tune only the cursed can hear. At night, the city wasn't quiet either. Lanterns swayed in the streets, and the eerie sound of shoes and bare feet that striking cobblestones carried through the darkness. Dogs barked, babies cried, and still sung. The dancing continued. It was no longer just a strange illness. It felt like the town itself had been taken over, its heartbeat replaced by the endless rhythm of feet. And as the death toll climbed, one question whispered through every home: would it ever stop?